What about TDs that are trying to work out of their houses? Do we need to bring all those cameras back to them at those kind of data rates, or how do we accomplish enabling them to see what's on those cameras so they can make the appropriate selection?
I think that's kind of the second model of remote production. You get into this, what is more like remote control. I think it's easier sometimes to get people to step away, to separate the user interface and the back end, if you like, the machinery from the user, and start to put distance between it. Because then you're not talking about bringing back high data rates. You can keep the high bandwidth, maybe like locally in the truck, So if you've got 30 cameras on an event, they all stay in the truck. All the routing is in the truck. All the infrastructure is there, at the venue, wherever that is. You keep your replay servers there. You keep your archiving facility there. You just remote your operators, and you say, well, we're not going to fly people in to that event. We'll have them work at home. And in that case, at home can be in the broadcast center, or it can be at home, at their desk, in their garage, wherever it might be. And I think that's where we've seen a lot of change over the last couple of years. Really, is there was I think it was ESPN started doing that in about 2016, mainly because it saved money. It saved costs of travel, of cost of expenses, of hotels, and they started specifically with replays, with EVS, and I think with graphics. And it was like, we can save 4 replay operators and 4 graphics operators, a couple of producers, and they worked at home, as in the broadcast center in Bristol. And it was just look, we don't need to fly 10 people to an event. It also meant that those operators, be it graphics or replays, or those producers, actually worked on more events. So they actually got much better, much quicker. Because a traditional replay op might work 2 days a week if they have to sort of fly in, travel day, production set day, production day, travel day. They might get to do that twice a week. These guys could be doing 2 games a day, 5-6 days a week. So their quality of production goes up. You get a much more consistent production.
So you get a higher production value. You get more consistent behavior, and your top tier talent are more readily available for your premier productions.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, and those guys get to go home at the end of the day, back to their families. They get to they get to sort of commute much easier. And like I say, maybe they're doing 2 games a day, where previously they do 2 games a week. So their skill level goes up much quicker, and you get a much higher sort of consistency of production.
There's a whole other part to this, though, that I'm kind of curious about. It's one thing to get some compressed images to see what you need to select, and have remote control. I think the data rates to control production devices on site from a remote location are pretty stable at this point. But there's lots of other stuff. There's all that intercom and other stuff that has to go on. How do we manage all of that part?
I think when you're in the broadcast center, that's quite straightforward. Normally, again, we come back to that dedicated line between the broadcast center and the truck. Let's say it's a truck, and that's relatively straightforward. Often it's like a layer 2 or a layer 3, network, and it's pretty easy. And also, we can talk about security in a bit, but there's a secure element to it because it's an extension of the broadcast network, which is generally a sort of a protected network. I guess with the intercom stuff, it's generally an extension, so it's pretty straightforward network extension. Where it gets interesting is, for me, the flip side of that. Doing it in the broadcast center is relatively straightforward. It's easy to bring multi-viewers back because it's the dedicated line. And where previously, in the previous example, we talked about bringing back multiple video feeds at high bandwidth for the cameras. Now, maybe you need to bring back 2 or 3 production multi-viewers, and that covers everything. Now, that's all you need to bring back. So you're bringing back 2 or 3 video lines. And as you say, the data rate for control is megabits per second. We're not talking gigabits, we're talking megabits per second. Really low bandwidth for control. The flip side is when we talk about at home, as in at home, when people can't go to the broadcast center, that's where it gets interesting, because then it's like, how do I get those things into someone's home? Then the technology has to change, the mindset has to change, the setup, totally changes when you do it